Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this engineer interview, our final one of the 2022 Rail Week. My name's Scott and I work at Primary Engineer. Now, before we start, I just wanted to say thank you very much for signing up to this year's competition. It's our 10th birthday, and we're so happy to have you celebrating it with us. Now, we can't wait to see all of the amazing and creative ideas that you're going to come up with. You're going to get some inspiration today from our special guest speaker, so you can answer the question, if you were an engineer, what would you do? As part of these interviews, we're going to be speaking with engineers who work on loads of different projects, all of them showing the wonderful, interesting and exciting things that happen when you work in engineering. Although these interviews are hosted live, you'll be able to catch them on our YouTube channel at the end of each week. We publish each interview at midday on Friday. Now, our special guest is going to start with a 10-minute presentation, all about what it's like to battle the weather with Network Rail, and then we will open up to questions from the audience. But now I'm going to hand over to our special guest, David Rugman.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Great. Well, thank you very much for inviting me along to speak to you today. I'm very excited and looking forward to talking to you about the work that not only I do, but hundreds of my colleagues do across Great Britain, England, Scotland and Wales in making sure that the railway runs smoothly and efficiently for you, our passengers, during sort of troubling weather times. Now, you may be wondering, well, why does the Network Rail need a weather team? So I work for the National Weather Team based in Milton Keynes, and we have various other teams around the Great Britain. And as Scott said, my name's David Rugman. I'm the National Weather Resilience Manager. Now, as I said, you may wonder, why do we need a weather team? Because there's why does Network Rail need a specific weather team to sort of combat the weather? Well, I'm just about to tell you about that. We're going to talk about the effects that summer and the hot weather has on the railway, winter and the cold, and then also autumn as well, which we have a special issue and challenge with the leaves. But first of all, if you don't know much about Network Rail, so a bit about Network Rail. So we actually own and manage the infrastructure of the rail network. We manage 20,000 miles of track, which is almost once around the world, not quite, but nearly. 30,000 bridges, thousands of signals, tunnels, level crossings. We also manage the rail timetable that you may have to look at just to check and see if your train is running on time. And we also operate some of the largest stations on the network. So those big stations in London, but also Birmingham and places like Glasgow and Edinburgh. So how does the weather affect the rail network? So let me take you to summer first. So if you remember back to summer and those days when it was nice and hot, and sometimes it was very hot, and especially over July and August, we have some heat waves. Well, that's particularly challenging for the rail network. And I've just got a short video to show and explain to you how the summer and the hot weather affect the railway. The hot weather affects the railway in many different ways. So we have the track that is so tightly put together that when the weather expands, the hot weather expands the track, it can actually buckle. And you can see the picture in the top left-hand corner there, train tracks which are not nice and straight, and they've sort of buckled a bit with the hot weather. But we also do things like quite simple things. So simple physics, really, that white reflects the heat. So we paint some of the points and the electronics white, so it actually reflects the heat and stops it from getting too hot. We also just try and have these sensors which are attached to the rail and electronic points on the network, and they notify engineers back at the depot to say, well, actually, it's getting quite hot here, it's quite dangerous. We could actually, the electronics could melt and pop, and so we might need to go out and do something. We try and fix the faults before they actually occur, and that's one of the key things what we're trying to do, is try and help fix potential faults before they take place. And also, we just try and slow the trains down so they don't actually run too fast. That may help. So now we move on to the winter. So how does the winter affect? So if you think of how the winter is, it's very cold, it's very icy, there's snow. It's also, when you move into the spring, it gets quite windy and wet. Well, that all has issues and challenges to the rail network. So let me just go and play this video here. I'll go to this website, and this will explain to you how the winter affects the network. As the video showed, that the wind can blow large objects onto the track and get in the way of the trains, which can be quite dangerous. But also, this is a short video of the effects of Storm Eunice, which happened earlier on in the year. And if you remember back there was very strong winds, and this is a building next to a train track, and the wind was so strong that it blew the roof off the building.
Wow.
Onto the train track. Now that's obviously, someone has to go and clear that up and to sort of stop the trains, because you don't want the trains sort of running into that debris there. So the wind can cause a lot of problems with the rail network. It also mentions about the rain. So too much rain can flood the track, and we have to make sure that all our drains are clean and clear of all debris. And you can see that. So believe it or not, that's not a river or a canal. There's actually two tracks underneath that station up in Yorkshire. And that gets quite dangerous. If you can't see the rail underneath the water, then the water might wash away a lot of the ballast that supports the track as well. So it can get very dangerous. So we have to make sure that our drains are clean and clear of any debris, so the water can drain away. So, and also the weather was saying, in the snow and ice. I mean, ice can build up on the tracks, blocking points, and the equipment can stop working. There's a picture there of a tunnel, and you can see the icicles that get built up on the edge of the tunnel, and those need to be sort of cleared away when it gets very cold. And then in snowy weather, when it's very snowy, some of the trains have to be fitted with snowplows to sort of clear the snow away. But as the video shown, and this is the great thing, it doesn't have to be very complicated solutions that we come up with. Just the simple fact of putting fences by the side of the network by the side of the railway, it sort of prevents snowdrifts from forming onto the from getting onto the rail. So it doesn't have to be anything too technologically advanced and too clever. It's just quite simple solutions can help and prevent any problems that we have. So as I said, I'll talk about the next. So move on to autumn. Now, we have a particular issue in autumn on the railway about leaves. And you sort of, well, how do leaves affect the railway? Well, in fact, they're quite dangerous to the trains as they move about. I've got another video here to sort of show you.
Wow, so leaves can end up just like ice, making things slippy for the trains.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. When the if you get those, I mean, when you've been out in the autumn and you sort of walk around on some of the leaves, they can be quite slippery. But with the rail network, when you get trains running over those leaves, they sort of create this sort of, like you saw that picture there with that sort of black sort of substance. It's a bit like if you haven't washed your frying pan in a while, you know, there's that sort of like black substance, and it gets quite sort of sticks to the rail, and it stops the wheel getting traction. And sort of when you brake, it's sort of it's a bit like black ice really for the roads, and it can get very dangerous. So we have to go out every day to try and clear the tracks to make sure that they're clean and safe for people to travel on. So we have, as you saw there, you have various different trains that go round and treat the tracks, but we also have cars. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen a car on the train tracks before, but we have these
Never.
modified Land Rovers, and we call them Sand Rovers. You can see what we've done there, but and they apply some of that material to the tracks, and they go around smaller parts of the network, and you can, and they go around at night, and you can, they apply the sand and all that gel that you saw as well, and they have little brushes there that clean the track as it goes along. And you can see there another example of that leaf mulch at the top. So as number of trains have run over the tracks with the leaves and they ground that leaves into the track, they sort of create this sort of brown little substance. So we have to go around and clean it. And so once we've cleaned the track, you can see how it's sort of clean, how it should look like. And that's very important to sort of help with the trains when they break. Because you imagine these big trains with lots of passengers, lots of tonnage there trying to stop in a hurry. It's you need the tracks as clean as possible. So autumn provides a particular challenge and safety risk for the network rail, and this is what myself and a whole range of people do, maintenance teams and delivery units out on the track to try and make sure the track is safe and reliable for people to travel around like you and your passengers, and you yourself, Scott, later on this afternoon. So that sort of ends my overall summary of how the weather affects the railway. So I'll be interested to hear some of your questions.
So yeah, I'm going on a train later. I'm up in Edinburgh, and it is incredibly wet and rainy. So what do your team do on a day like today when the weather's so wet?
So they would have received a forecast couple of days in advance to say, well, actually, we've got the rain coming in, and it's going to affect this part of the Scotland and network. So what they do, they start preparing a couple of days before to say, well, okay, we need to make sure that all the drains are clear. We need to go out on the track. So probably earlier on this morning, there were treatment trains out and they were sort of treating the track to make sure that all the leaves are clean and tidy. But also as well, the station staff making sure that the stations that you travel to are sort of safe and sort of dry and free from any sort of a water that you could sort of slip up on or do yourself damage on. So there's lots of work that goes on sort of before the train service happens, but also during the day as well. Some of those trains go around and mop up and clean after some of the trains that have travelled as well. So hopefully it would be a nice and safe and easy journey for you, Scott.
Hopefully. We've got a question coming in here from Andrew, and Andrew asks, recently my mum was on a train which was delayed by a trampoline on the line. What other unusual things have blown on the line? We saw a roof in that video, a trampoline. What else? We must see crazy things.
Oh yeah, I mean trampolines are very common. People who live
Wow.
by it's more common. It is very common. So they're very popular. People who live by the train track, the it does trampolines do sort of blow from people's gardens onto the train track. But there's all sorts of things like that. So there was just recently, there was even things like uh, plastic bags. So on the overhead lines, they get sort of tangled up on the overhead lines. So the train and the pantograph can't touch the overhead lines. So it sort of creates a sort of shortage, electric shortage. So we have to uh, clear those sort of plastic bags, but also as well, recently we've had things like hay and all the things that get tangled up on the overhead lines that stop the rail and stop the trains and the pantograph from touching them. So hay, plastic bags, trampolines, uh, beach balls, anything that isn't fastened down and in a strong wind can actually get on the line and cause a delay. So yes, yeah, trampolines is very common.
Wow. So we've got a question about you, David. What was it that inspired you to become an engineer?
Well, I mean, it was really, I mean, so I've always been interested in trains. I've always, when I was young, I used to go along to stations. I used to sort of record the numbers in my notebook. And I used to have my little Hornby train set. So I really used to sort of love being in trains. And actually, my background, when I was at school, I was interested in maths. So I used to, yeah, I was really keen and I really liked maths. And my background is in statistics. So when I joined Network Rail, I sort of joined the statistics department, sort of calculating all the delays and where the delays happen and where people get um, delayed. So, and then the great thing about Network Rail is that you can move around into different teams and work on different things. So previous to working in the weather resilience program, I worked in the digital rail program, which is all about creating new technologies. And so to move so trains can actually be more aware of where all they are on the network and where they are in relation to other trains on the network. I think for me personally, being an engineer is just being able to solve problems and actually help people. That's the thing. Some of those solutions there actually help people and stop trains getting delayed. And that's the thing. It just feels as if I'm contributing to something that helps people in a way that gets them around the network. And I think that's the main thing for me is helping people and just just solving problems.
Yeah, brilliant. So do you get to work with lots of different people who do lots of different things?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing is I can get travel around the country and I speak a lot to the engineers, track engineers who deal with the tracks, and then signalers as well. So I go to the signal boxes and speak to them about how they can see the trains on their computers. I also have to go and speak to sort of train drivers and see how they drive on the network. Because as you can say, if it's like really dark and wet and windy, it's like, well, how do you drive? How can you see? And how can you see the signals and things like that? How can we make things better and easier for you? So yeah, so we're always constantly looking for easier and more efficient ways of trying to get the trains moving. And it's yeah, so we get to speak to a lot of a range of people.
We've got another question in here, and I think this is one that you probably think about a lot, but how is climate change affecting everything that you do?
Well, it's going to get even more harder and difficult because as you see, the temperatures this summer, I mean, we've had
Yeah.
record temperatures. It's going to have more and more problems. We're going to get more heavier rain. So these are sort of challenges that we're dealing with because a lot of the network is still very old. I mean, it's still, you know, some parts are still up to 100 years old. So we need to
Wow.
try. Well, I mean, yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's yeah, the network's very there are some rural areas that are very old. So we're just trying to look at climate change because one of those videos they don't talk to you about is the there's an area down in you might have travelled down in Devon and Torquay where the track goes by the seaside
All
in
right.
Dawlish, and we've had to sort of recently build up the walls, the sea walls, because of the rising sea levels to try
Oh,
and stop the sea from getting onto the train track. And that's a very important part of the track that sort of connects sort of Devon and Cornwall to the sort of London. And so we have to take into account the rising sea levels, but also these temperatures. So we have to build track that actually withstands higher temperatures, and all the points and all the equipment has to withstand more and more severe weather. And I think it's going to create come up with even more solutions as the sort of temperatures and the weather changes. So yes, no climate change. We have a special climate change department as well that's looking at
oh
that
wow.
more longer term. I suppose what we do is more sort of short to medium term, but the longer term, like 10, 20 years in advance, and how that's going to affect the railway, that is a big sort of project that is going on.
Wow. So we've got another question in here. I like this one. How hard was your job when you first started, and has it gotten any easier?
Uh, it's very difficult. But it's yeah, it was very difficult to begin with. As with all jobs, whenever you do something new, it is difficult and challenging. But you know, with the support of your colleagues and your friends around you to help you and to point you in the right direction and to tell you and explain to you what you need to do, then actually becomes a bit easier. But frequently you still come up with challenges and new problems every day, but then, you know, that's part of the enjoyment of it, is trying to sort of meet those challenges and say, look, you know, let's see how can we put this together. And we've got so many talented people around Network Rail that are very specialist in their field around track and signaling and different points that you go and speak to them. They're very clever people and they can help you. So whatever challenges and problems I have, it's not just me facing them on my own. There's a team of us, and with together we can come up with solutions to solve those problems. So yes, it was difficult to begin with, but and it constantly is. But I mean that's part of the fun of it, really.
Yeah, yeah. So this is a question that actually got sent into us, and it's about so you've worked in different areas in Network Rail, but what keeps you excited about what you're doing?
Well, I think it's the again, I think it goes back to me being really interested in trains and being an old-fashioned train spotter. And the network is continually developing. There's new bits of track being laid. There's the whole new section of like high speed 2 that's coming up
Yeah.
between London and Birmingham. That's going to be very new, and there's got lots of new trains and lots of new bits of technology. So it's continually evolving and developing. And people will always people always need to travel about by train, and unless we sort of invent sort of I don't know, hover cars, I suppose, that sort of hover around. I don't know. I think there will always be a need for transport to travel around, and people will always want to go on holiday and travel by train. So I think it's a continuing evolving industry, quite an exciting industry, and I think it's very, and yeah, it's always going to be needed. It's always going to be there.
So and this is another question that we got sent in, and it's what's the future of trains look like? Are we going to get Sand Rovers that drive themselves? Are we going to get automated trains? What's the future?
Wow, that's a very good question. What is the future of trains? Well, I mean, the technology is there for trains to drive themselves. And also, technology is there for trains to be able to communicate with themselves. So you won't need
Oh,
uh, signals and traffic lights on the network because the trains will know how far away they are from the train in front. And they'll be able to modify
ah,
their speed so you can so they can go fast or slow depending on where they are on the network. So at the moment we have signalers who sort of check where the trains are. So I think there's a lot more modern technology, a bit like driverless cars. I think there'll be driverless trains running around the network, and also it'll enable more trains as well to travel. So you'll be able to have more trains sort of closer together. So I think, yeah, I mean, also there's HS2, High Speed 2 coming up, which is going to be very exciting. And then hopefully as well, yeah, just more. Yeah, I think as technology, yeah. So I think it's more the sort of as technology improves, there's going to be more faster, bigger trains that sort of drive themselves around the network that people can get on. Be like sort of buses, really, a bit more frequent.
Yeah.
Bit more.
Oh, I like the idea of trains
Yeah.
talking to each other. It'd be like Thomas the Tank Engine.
But yes, exactly. Yes, yeah.
So we saw in the presentation that different seasons mean there's different problems that you have to work towards. Is there a good season that the trains like the most? Is it best in spring, summer, winter, autumn?
Yeah, I think it's mainly around April, May time, where it's not too hot, not too cold, not too windy, but it's still sort of fine and bright. That's the time that's the best time to go around. I mean, I know up where you are, it's sort of very wet, but down south with me, it's sort of quite nice and sunny, not too windy. It's quite dry. So these are sort of the exact times. But the sort of the planning goes ahead for with it's continuous sort of planning process. So at the moment we're reviewing what happened in summer and how we can improve things for next summer, but also as well we're sort of planning ahead for winter and what are the likely problems that are coming up this winter, and then also starting to look forward to next summer as well. So it's a continually evolving cycle of looking at these different seasons and sort of looking ahead to see, well, how can we do things better? What didn't go well this summer and what can we improve for next summer? So it's continually evolving, learning our lessons.
Brilliant. Well, my birthday's in May, which means it sounds like that's the best time to travel. So I'll book
Yes.
my holidays then. I think we've got time for one more question, and this is a fun one. Are there any puns that you use when you're talking about your work? Yeah, I heard the Sand Rover earlier.
any, oh my lord. Any puns that way? Oh my lord, my brain's gone.
Yep, it's on the spot now.
I don't know, but oh, I can't think of any. I mean, there's usually lots that we do as well around. I can't remember. My mind's gone blank. I bet I'll probably think of one or two.
Yeah.
After in a couple of weeks, in a later on this afternoon. I'm sure there must have been something that we.
I was thinking something like you've got to be staying on track when you're doing your projects and stuff.
But yes, yeah. Well, that's the yes, the obvious one. Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, I just look at the time now. I just want to say, David, thank you very much for joining us, and a special thanks to everybody out there for taking part. You've now hopefully got some inspiration, and you can be little engineers in the making, because now it is your turn to come up with your own engineering ideas. Remember and send them in to us once you've finished, so we can get our certificates out to you, and then hopefully see you in person at the exhibitions in May. So thank you, everyone, and remember, if you were an engineer, what would you do?